If you put 5 of your salespeople in this room and you asked each one of them to write on the back of this paper what they believe the value proposition is, okay? How
Mm.
many of them do you think would be exactly the same?
0.
Exactly, okay? And that's the problem because most field people have to think on the fly. And if they're getting a marketing packaged value proposition, which is typically one size fits all, then they have to mess with it in order to have it any relevance with those
Right.
people.
Thank you so much for, again, joining us, and we can talk more about Augusta and more about Thompson, but I want to talk about you. You are an incredibly impressive woman, person, and I can't believe we got you to Thompson. I'm like jittery because I can't believe I'm getting to interview you. But just to give some context to the salesgravy audience, Lisa Dennis, who is joining me today, is the president of Knowledgence Associates, the author of Value Propositions That Sell, Turning Your Message into a Magnet That Attracts Buyers. She is an expert in developing buyer-centric value propositions that help sales teams engage prospects and close deals more effectively. Lisa has worked with companies across industries to refine their messaging and sales approach, ensuring that they resonate with buyers in a competitive market. Her value proposition platform is a structured method for creating, refining, and implementing value propositions tailored to different buyer personas, so important, and sales situations. Her approach focuses on making sales messaging relevant, engaging, persuasive, helping sellers stand out from the competition. Well, let's start there.
Okay.
Well, there's all of that. We'll start with messaging.
Yep.
And salespeople, in my experience, and I've been a salesperson, and this is more telling of me, is I have a hard time paying attention to messaging. I think that I'm so focused on the outcome of
Mm,
getting a meeting and then getting to the
mhm.
next step. And I've been in these sales conversations I've been sold to by AI consultants, and you can tell when you're in a sales process, which is not always a bad thing. There are great sales processes. There's the very boring ones, and then there's the very bad ones. But the very boring ones are almost all that I experience. So they're essentially running BANT or MEDPIC or
Right.
MEDIC
Right.
or some sales methodology. And look, I'm hypersensitive because I work at a sales training organization, but I can tell you're asking me questions in such a way that it's like a checklist for you. And the messaging is lost. I have no idea what their company stands for, the passion that they do they even like this job? Eh, Where where do you help teams the most when it comes to messaging? Or where does that aha moment sort of hit for a seller?
I think at the end of the day, what we're supposed to be doing is creating a conversation.
Hmm.
So we put a ton of, structure and steps and all of that, which inhibit a real conversation. Okay. And because we're paid, and I'm a seller too, we're paid to sell our stuff, it gets in the way
Hmm.
of actually creating a real conversation. Here's the thing, and this is kind of why I came to the way to what I'm doing. If I'm going to ask you a question,
Hmm.
if you forget everything that your parents taught you about being polite, about your manners, all of that, and I invited you to have lunch with me, and I asked you, "Hey, do you want to talk about me, or do you want to talk about you?"
I want to talk about me. I don't have to forget. I want to talk about me. Actually, can we stop and just talk about me for a few minutes?
Exactly. Okay. Every buyer we face feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really care they don't care about any of it.
Mm.
So in order to have a conversation, right, that I'm going to engage you, the more I plug into letting you talk about you, and then I can work with that, the more that's going to be a conversation that you're going to be interested in having. And then the whole kind of med pick, challenger, all those questions, which everybody's heard, steps away. It kind of goes over here.
Mm.
And then I come up with questions that are relevant at the moment while you're talking about what you care about. That's how I think of it.
And I think the crux of that, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you're essentially letting go of the linear process.
Yeah.
You have to let go of that. Um, how do you help sellers? I imagine that there's lots of curious people in the world. That if you're in sales and you know the top 80%, will take the bottom 20% and throw them out the window, right? So top 80%. There's curious people all along that way, but they're not all good at being curious.
Mhm.
And your messaging process and how you develop teams and what they do relies on their ability to hear and respond with the right level of curiosity so that it does feed into that person's need to talk about themselves. That self-disclosure loop is what we call it here. Uh, how do you help the people, or if you know you're curious but you're not very good at it, how would you develop that skill that leads into a better messaging process?
So behind having that kind of real authentic flow of conversation, of course, there's some stuff, right? There's some structure. And the first one is about doing the homework.
Mm.
So what do you really know about them? What words and language does your buyer audience use? And get really, really targeted. The problem with most value propositions are that they're one size fits all, which I can tell you I have a closet full of clothes that are one size fits all that don't fit me, that don't fit anyone, right? And I think that's the same thing with a value prop and messaging, okay? I mean, there's something to be said for doing kind of industry-based messaging. But as a seller, if I can't pull it down to the key members of my buying team and I can't address, then I've got a problem. So it's really about I build on a front end to a value prop that is really tied to the top of mind things that my particular target buyer is going after in their language.
Mm.
And I set up a kind of an opening statement that's kind of the top layer of the value prop. And it's really easy to pull relevant questions from that. So that's why I talked about a value proposition platform, because I don't look at it as a statement or a pitch, right?
Right.
I'm a seller who hates pitches. I do. I
That's
hate
a really
elevator
good point,
pitches.
though, because if you're listening to this and you heard value prop and you equated it to pitch, that's not this conversation.
Not at all. Not at
Yeah.
all. Nobody wants to be pitched, and everybody can smell the pitch a mile away. Okay. I hate elevator pitches. And in 27 years, I've never pitched anyone in an elevator. Like, can we let go of that? It's so dumb.
It's
so
one of the
old.
most uncomfortable situations
It's
you
crazy.
can be in.
So it's really hard to build a conversation or to build content if all you have is a one or two liner. Like, where do you go with that? You could go anywhere. So the platform I built is a set of modular pieces that allows you on the fly really easily and to do a little advanced work if you're smart for the different types of buyers that you're going after. So all I'm doing is plugging in, oh, they care about these three things. These are the words that they use about it. Here's the best questions. Now I'm set up to have a real conversation. And if I pay attention and I'm listening, I've got that stuff in my back pocket that I can pull in kind of real time.
It's about understanding the people in the business, not necessarily the business in whole.
Yeah.
Because sellers, and I have this problem as well, and I'm sure you struggle with it sometimes. You come into a new situation, maybe a really juicy opportunity. You're looking at this deal, and you're saying, I could win this, and then you kind of get neurotic about it, and you go, I don't know much about laser computer technology in the industrial factory world. I've been in those situations where I was meeting with a chief marketing officer of this really industrial business. And that's just not the world that I came out of. So I tried to learn everything I could about these laser computer systems. And I went to speak with the chief marketing officer, and we didn't talk about lasers or computers at all. It threw me off. And actually, I didn't do well in the deal because I had spent too much time trying to prove that I knew their business instead of showing that person that I was listening, and their personality type was different than mine. And you talk about personas,
Right.
matching messaging to personas. So walk me through your philosophy on personas, how you see them in a business, and what they kind of manifest, if you can categorize them in buckets, if you will. And then we'll get into matching messaging, maybe even the same message, but for different personas across the board.
Sure. My whole attitude about a personas is they're useful to the extent that they get close to real people. Because here's the thing, and it took me a while to figure this out. I'm not selling to organizations.
Yeah.
An organization doesn't buy. A person buys.
Right.
Or a group of people buys, right? and especially if it's like a big company or it's that logo that you want to get, you're right. It's very mesmerizing. But at the end of the day, the deal's going to fail or there's going to be success based on who I'm sitting in front of, right? So on the persona side, personas have to be based on interviews with real customers,
Hmm.
with real people. They have to be based on real conversations, not something that you pull out of AI, which is really hot right now. Oh, look at these great personas. I'm like, okay.
They're so good though.
Oh, they're so.
Have you
they're-
seen them?
I have seen them.
They
However,
feel so good.
it feels so good, and you're so happy it took 2 minutes to do it. But what I have to tell you is they're not necessarily indicative or close enough to the real people.
Right.
Right. So it's always got to be that plus. But every persona that I've built is based on conversations in interviews with real customers. Then you go internally and you do the internal conversations. You look at where the matchup is, and then you extract the right language. And to make sure that you're focusing on, what are the key drivers of them making a decision, right? How do they look at their own role in that? What are the biggest risks to them personally? There's a whole host of other things that, honestly, I don't know that ChatGPT is really going to do a great job of some of that.
Right. They're not building a good 3D person.
Exactly.
It's a 2D person.
Yep.
It's the likeness of a human. But when rubber meets the road, you're going to find a lot of challenges.
Exactly, and I think that's the biggest one. Like I really hate the personas where like Sally Sue and her dog Spot, and they like walks on Sunday, like totally useless, right?
Yeah. What do I need to know about their walk habits?
Yeah.
To sell
So
them?
that's really not very useful. And then the other thing is I've seen the extreme, where I've been in, large tech company go, we've got personas. Look, we'll show you in Salesforce, and all they are is a title. There's no backup, there's no description, there's no nothing. That's not a persona either. So it's about how close can you get to the real people who are doing the kind of work that you can help, and to pull and extract from those conversations.
Okay, so if you're building 3D, 2.5D personas, right? So you're getting as close as you possibly can because you're doing those interviews. As a seller, you're going to come across people in the business who are making decisions. And like you said, people make decisions. There's a reason that business over the last 50 years has moved from a single buyer to a committee buy.
Yep.
It's because when you have one person making decisions, they do it emotionally, not with the business. So you're selling to people, not the business, but that's why committees exist. You're going to have to sell to both the CEO or the director of sales or the director of technology or the chief marketing officer, or maybe all of those people at the same time or in a series in succession. When you build messaging for a sales team or an organization, how do you help them mold that to the different people within those committees so that it makes sense, but it's not off brand or it doesn't skew to a place? I think it can feel like a pandering to a prospect. They go, you're clearly just messaging to me and I know it.
Right.
Versus
if you're being that obvious about it,
exactly.
So the way I look at it is I think about value props as being in a hierarchy, right? Because if you just build one, well, right by definition, you're doing a one size fits all. Good luck with that. But if you come up with who is my top target within my buying committee, right? Is that the person that signs the check? Is that the one who actually makes the decision, which is sometimes not the person who signs the check, right? Like, who is that person? Build what I call the foundational value prop, okay? And the platform that I put together is pretty modular, right? So I'm aiming the buyer need section, the front end of the value prop at that person, right? And then every other person on that buying team, I conversion it, right? So
Okay.
the offer statement should be pretty solid. Like, if you've done a good job, it should be attractive to everybody. Your differentiators, depending on how many you have, you could switch in and out. I also add a piece that doesn't come with most standard ones, which is I do a backup, which is top 3 to 5 value drivers, key points of interest, almost like the mental checklist.
Yeah.
Right? How do we quantify those? How do we provide third-party proof? I could switch those in and out depending upon who I'm talking to on the buyer team. So it gives me the ability to version fairly easily.
Right.
That rather than start with a blank page every time. Because once you do that, the message starts going off in 10 different directions.
And I love that process, and it's difficult initially. I think once you get a habit of doing it, it becomes so much easier, just like anything else. But you have that backup or several backups. What's happened to thousands and thousands and thousands of sellers is they get into a conversation and they deliver that value prop that they work so hard on, and you can almost just see the dead eye. It just didn't it didn't hit them, and you know it. And you're in that meeting, and maybe you're on a Zoom call, which is even harder because we're
Right.
sitting right here, and if I can tell that you didn't like whatever I said, I'm going to make a very quick adjustment.
Right.
In a Zoom call, it's just so much silence, and I love silence as a seller, but not that kind of silence.
Right. Exactly.
And so I want to have you walk through your value proposition, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
How you sell your services in business to a buyer. That way people get an example and they get to hear how cool your business is, of what that looks like when you walk into a room or you're building a proposal deck, or you're doing marketing to a specific client, or you're prospecting. What does your value proposition sound like?
Okay. So the first thing I would ask you is if you put 5 of your salespeople in this room and you asked each one of them to write on the back of this paper what they believe the value proposition is. Okay. How many of them do you think would be exactly the same?
0.
Exactly. Okay. And that's the problem, because most field people have to think on the fly. And if they're getting a marketing packaged value proposition, which is typically one size fits all, then they have to mess with it in order to have it any relevance with those people. And they're going to go in 27 different directions, right? Now, I'm half marketing and half seller. Okay, so that makes me a mutant individual. Okay, it really does.
You usually hate it on both sides, right?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. She's one of them. No, she's one of them. However, if I don't have an array, and I think of this as a hierarchy, here's our kind of main value prop. Maybe I want to break that down by industry vertical. Maybe I want to break that down by personas. Maybe I want to do both. Is to give people logical choice in terms of what they use in the field that's consistent, that's already been pressure tested with a customer, right? Or with clients, and that we know works. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing. If we're just kind of winging it out there, even if a seller manages to hit it well, right? They said something, right?
But they don't know that they didn't get there with
and
logic.
nobody else has the benefit of it,
Right.
right? So that's the real challenge.
It's just lost in a vacuum somewhere.
Right. So starting with the customer. So I, usually work through, let's go talk to a handful of your customers who are madly in love with you. Let's talk to some customers who are, okay, we're good. I want to talk to somebody who bought within the last 6 months, and I want to talk to people who said no. Which a lot of companies go, I'm like, don't you want to know why they said no? Do you know why they said no? Right. And that's usually a very interesting conversation for those clients who are brave enough to let us do that. And then you kind of look through that, you pull out themes and threads, you do a similar set of interviews internally to see what your people are saying, and you look at where there's overlap, where there's gaps, where there's opportunities, and then you pull it in.
You discuss, I'm going to have to be very careful how I say this. You discuss the relationship between marketing and sales and communication between these two departments.
Right.
I love them both. I'm in both as well. I'm a marketer. I have sold all my career. I've done both. We're maybe one of those few people who have had to pick up the phone in the morning and then also design the website in the afternoon.
You're a mutant like me.
Exactly. So these departments typically have a relationship, and this is my personal observations. So I'm going to let everyone else off the hook. You can judge me all you want to. But marketing sends us shit leads. We hate them. They don't do anything for us. All these decks don't make any sense. My buyers don't like it. And you get the people who have 5 different opinions about what the value proposition is, and they wing it in the field because marketing is just not helping them. And they have that relationship. And then marketing on the other side goes, sales doesn't even follow up with anything. They don't listen to what we say. They don't use the decks that we build. They don't care about the kinds of customers that we know are buying from us because they did all the research on it. And the sales team says, those people don't buy from us. We called them. They don't like it. And so that relationship can feel very contentious. And I think it's a good thing in a way. It builds some camaraderie, sort of commiserate together. But you help teams work through this.
Yes.
How?
So
I wish I had a better question.
No. How is a good question?
How is it even possible? How do you do that?
If marketing's over here in the corner doing messaging and throwing it over the fence, that's problem number 1. Okay. If they're talking to customers, fabulous. But sales should be part of that. Sales should be part of that process. So typically I'm always bringing in, it's not just marketing typically hires me, okay? Believe it or not, for the value prop thing. It's usually that side of it. And my first question is, where are your salespeople, right? Where's your
Mhm.
head of sales? Because reality is, whatever you put out there, no buy-in, not
doesn't
happening,
matter.
right? So let's bring everybody into that room. Those conversations that we have with customers, we need to do it together.
Mm.
We need to decide together what makes sense, what doesn't. Where are the gaps? Where are the pitfalls? Where are the opportunities? Because marketing is going to miss some stuff and sales is going to miss some stuff around how to pull together
No.
that better. Yeah, it's hard to say. I know you've never missed a thing. I certainly have, right? And the fact of the matter is that you're not going to get agreement on what the message is if one party's building it and the other one's not.
That's the best way to describe how the landscape plays out typically, where you throw it over the fence and you throw things back over the fence and you throw things back over the fence and it just is ignored. Eventually it just becomes an ignored message that the marketing is doing things and the sales team's doing things, and maybe they can be successful independently. And that's true. Like, you've been in organizations where
Oh,
the
sure.
marketing team was successful and the sales team was successful, but they weren't successful together. And I think that what you're addressing is buy-in. And we deal with this on the sales training side where, we are hired by learning and development and the HR team who
Yep.
wants to bring us in. And it's a wonderful relationship with them. But then they put us in front of the sales team, and the sales leader had either no idea or wasn't on board with it to begin with and didn't have any investment into the process. And we left after training their team. And then 3 weeks later, they were all doing the same things they were doing before we came
Right.
in. So it's that process with sales and marketing that you have to address. And I love this interview process, the persona process of going and talking to customers. It's an undervalued tool, but I think over advised in a way where you're telling teams to go do this and they go and they do, but they don't do it with the right strategy. And I like that you brought them both together to have these conversations. And there are customers that love you and customers that are okay and customers that said no. I want to start with the no.
Mm-hmm.
I have always had a fear of going and talking to a customer that said no to me.
Mm.
Just personally, and I'm going to self-admit on this podcast that I am not stronger than anybody else. When they say no to me, it hurts me.
Yep.
It's personal. Not that I think that they're bad people or anything. It hurts me personally.
Yes.
Do you find that sales teams make the story they make up as to why the customer said no is fairly consistent with the reason the customer said no?
No.
Interesting. What do you find?
The reasons we typically think of the same set of reasons. Like we have our own little, as salespeople, checklist, right? If I could have given him that discount, that price was too high. They didn't really understand. They're going to do it themselves. Blah 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 blah. And you have a real conversation with somebody who said no, and you're going to be shocked because the reasons are. I mean, maybe it's the price, but that means you didn't sell value. So there you go. But the reality is it could be a number of different things that you didn't have. And some of it's really interesting and really telling. Some of it may have something to do with a past experience they had or something they heard about you or whatever, but you're not going to know unless you ask, And that's the thing. That's why I think it's really important to go see, why did they say no, right? I even would like to talk to a couple people that were customers and left you. They hate you now. Why is that, right? And those are really interesting. I think there's one other thing, just to circle back for a second. I think there's one other piece here that's really important that I think gets missed a lot is when marketing pulls together their new messaging and their new value props, right? It is a toss over, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should launch messaging internally before you launch it externally. And usually those two things get just smushed together. We're going to throw this at you and the campaign went out. And that's a problem. Because you're not preparing your sales team to deliver it, right? Oh, here's a playbook. Here's this. Here's that. That's great. Okay, so you threw more content on them.
And then they're not, because salespeople have the attention span of a teaspoon.
They do, and they don't have time. That's the scarcest resource, right? So you have to actually launch it. There has to be a launch plan that's internal before it goes external. And I think that helps.
I think that does too. I agree with you. Because if you are and I've been in these positions I worked for a really large organization, a massive organization, and they did not roll out any messaging for new products that we were supposedly selling to our business customers. And they would have 3 new products a quarter, and suddenly we'd be expected to sell them. And here's a value proposition for it. And I had 13 people on my sales team. None of us used that language because we didn't know it. We had no anticipation of it. It wasn't in emails that were sent to us over time. It
Yep.
wasn't in our boss's mouth when she was telling us how to go sell these things. She was reading us the value proposition literally for the first time herself on a call, telling us about this new service or product or value proposition that we had to deliver. So she had no idea what it was. And then, of course, we had no idea what it was.
Right.
And we went, that's stupid. We're not doing that.
Right.
It's not going to work. Immediate reaction is not going to work. So I think you're absolutely right. If you give it time, you roll it out before you launch, you have a better chance of it sticking and becoming part of their normal language just because of time. Just sort of pick it up over a period of weeks or months or whatever that is. And then going back to that process. So you have the ones that say no are one thing. I'm actually interested in what you see when people say, I hired them and now I hate them. I don't think that that's always the case. Sometimes you just move away. But
Right.
what have you found in those conversations, even for your own business, or if you can give any examples of how those conversations go for a marketing and sales department to pick information out of and learn from?
I think one of the things that I've heard multiple times is I was told this, this, and this, and I didn't get it, or it's missing, or like the messaging. Actually, they do pay attention.
Yeah.
If they've gone that far with you, they do actually pay attention, right? And so then it's a question of where did the disconnect happen, right? And sometimes that's an operational disconnect. Other times it's an intention disconnect, I guess is the way I would think about it, right? They make assumptions on what the intentions are going to be once the deal turns into here we go, and then you go from there. Plus, you never, a lot of times the salespeople are gone. They move
Right.
on, right? Well, wait a minute, so and so told me this. Well, sorry, but we're over here. It's like, we locked you out of that silo. Now you're in the new silo, and it's different here, right? So I hear a lot of those kinds of things. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes the language that we use to engage and entice changes dramatically once they become a customer. That's another disconnect. So how are we pulling that through? Are we also training and launching this messaging with your customer success team, your tech support team, anybody who's in a customer facing role? No one ever tells them any of this stuff. Ever.
No.
So they get all the complaints. They have no idea what was said.
My salesperson said X, Y, and Z and promised the moon, and the customer success person goes, they said what?
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Right. So the messaging has to be, it's got to be all the way through. I was working with a company. They were about a 10-year-old startup. Okay.
Yeah.
10 years old, kind of.
We're an 18-year-old startup.
There you
That's
go.
fine.
But they had reached sort of a plateau, right? So very technical, internal, original founding team. Everybody's an engineer selling to non-technical audience. And they were selling it the way they would want to be sold to, not the way they want to be sold to, right?
I imagine it was very flat.
Very flat, really fascinating stuff. So we went to the customers, we did the whole thing, the whole shebang. At the end, their new CMO who brought me in said, okay, and he was the only non-engineer on the team. How do we get this out there? Like, what's your thought? And I said, we're going to get it in here first. And so we did a company meeting, which, he was like, well, we'll just tell the salespeople, or we could give them like this deck. And I'm like, no. This has to be rolled out to the entire organization. So we did a company meeting and we went through the messaging. We went through why we went in that direction. We shared all the key points from the customers that we interviewed, and we provided the whole platform, right, to the sales team. Here's how you use it. Here's the discovery questions that go with it. Here's a set of conversations that you're likely to have, right? And we made sure the entire team, not just the salespeople, knew it. And we had one of their newer salespeople come see us afterwards and said, I've never worked for any company that gave me this much to work with.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. Otherwise, you're on your own. Right.
You are.
And that's really hard.
It is hard. And that's why if it circles all the way back, those 5 sales reps who have 5 different value propositions,
Right.
and the customer success team that says, why did the salespeople say that? I don't know how to solve that. No, that's not how we do it over here. And it's the customer that says yes and then says no later. And those misunderstandings of intention or what was supposed to be delivered usually comes from marketing not working with sales to deliver a value message that is threaded through our entire organization of what we do as a business, what we expect of you as a business person and as a salesperson. You should say these things because we know that we can deliver on those things and that they mean something to the customer, so that when they go to customer success or they go to tech support or whatever that is, tech support and customer success also have the same congruent message that they know that you're delivering and they can address. If we're all firing off out of our hip, there's going to be a lot more tension and friction in the organization, the business, and how we interact with our customers. You have a lot of sales conversations. You have a lot of marketing conversations. What should people avoid saying? What are like the big no-nos in your mind that scream pandering, lack of knowledge, one size fits all, all the pitfalls and trappings of bad messaging?
So I keep a list of words or expressions I hate to find in value props that I find.
What's your least favorite one?
My current least favorite is purpose built. Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, you built this for a purpose. Good for you. Let me buy 12. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me?
I
right?
like that.
I hate that gives me the purpose built. One size fits all. I have never in my life seen a buyer who leapt out of bed and said, I want to buy one size fits all, right? That's not going to happen, right? One-stop shop is in the same bucket. Really? Everybody thinks that's a real value add. How many customers really come to the table where that's primary? That's one of their 3 to 5 value drivers. No.
That's a nice to have.
It's a nice to have.
Thank you for giving it to me.
But it's not in the top 3
I'm
or
not
5.
spending $2 million on your technology because it's a one-stop shop.
Right. We're the industry leader. Well, 3 of your competitors also claim to be the industry leader. Light your pants on fire. Like, according to who?
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of things. The other one that really drives me crazy is when buried in the value prop is, we increase profits, we reduce costs, we increase efficiency. The only problem is nobody ever says by how much, and that's the question. So if you're not going to put a stake in the ground and be able to state, right, so that it's a real thing, and you can prove it, then it's the same kind of marketing fluff that everybody else does. So it's not differentiating. And I've had, companies say to me, oh, we can't say that, or legal won't let us say it. Then your claim of cost savings, pull it out of your value prop.
Move somewhere else.
Move it somewhere else. Yeah. Like if you can get it in a case study and you've got permission to produce their results, that's great. Use that. But it adds nothing. I mean, think about it. A value prop is a very valuable piece of real estate, really. So you've got to get all the generic, fluffy, doesn't make sense, out, so that what you got in there is actually meaningful. Then I typically will, kind of do a review of what the current state of a value prop is, right? And I do a lot of work. I'm in big enterprise, but I also do a lot of work with startups. I have been in the last few years with some accelerators.
Yep.
And I'm doing one with a robotics accelerator, 12 companies. And we do a kind of a round robin on their first value prop, the ones that they use today. And I just strip all of that stuff out. And then it's like, what's left? Not much, right?
Right. There's a lot of, and I worked for a company out of Y Combinator, and what I noticed is working, and I worked with other Y Combinator companies. Yep. It was a firm that did some design work and building for these other startups. And what I noticed as a seller working with those founders, and their language style was very focused on getting investment, obviously.
Right.
But it was a lot of fluffy, like like it sounded good to say it out loud, but at the end of the sentence you didn't know what you were talking, like it didn't mean anything.
No,
And I imagine you're seeing that a lot at both levels, enterprise and startup level.
absolutely. I mean, I see it a ton in the startup world. It is kind of like, what is it that the investors want to hear? And there's such a thing as an investor value prop and a buyer value prop, and they're not the same. They're not even close.
No.
Right?
No.
I've done a ton of work with Techstars companies. I've done about 135 startups. And it's always kind of, it's a real transformation when, you get them to go back and say, wait a minute, I get that we'll do it with your investor one. You still have to talk to buyers.
They're too different.
Yeah, they're too different. And you have to really think through about what does that really mean? And can you really prove it? And if you're early stage, is this something that will ultimately be provable? Because if it's not, don't bother saying it now. So
Right.
I like to do, I'm sort of like a surgeon, like, with the scalpel and cutting out all the fluffy stuff.
And this is an interesting part of the conversation, because working with these startups that may not have, maybe they're founder sellers, right? So they're founder led. They have somebody at the top who's selling, and then maybe a few people behind them who are doing some of the work while they're growing. Same thing with like smaller business, medium sized businesses who may have 5 sellers, maybe have 2 sellers, and they're not the enterprise level of organization, and they might not have a value proposition that they built purposely.
Right. Very true.
Purpose built. Sorry, I didn't mean to drop that in there. But they want to go that direction, and yet they're not in a place where they can say, I can prove this, I can prove this, I can prove this. They just don't have the resource. They don't have the resources to do that. They're doing a good service, and maybe they want to go out and do some interviews, but where would you help them start with a value proposition that is authentic to where they're at, but doesn't lose business because it didn't sound good enough? There's a fine line there. And
there is a fine line there. So first of all, it's really about going and doing the homework. What is really going on in the industries? It's picking a target. I think one of the biggest challenges I see for a lot of these startups is, I can't do, well, we have like 10 different markets. We could sell this everywhere.
Yeah.
Smack yourself, okay?
Yeah.
Because that's not true. It's not going to be true for some time, if ever, right? So you've got to pick where, you've got to aim. So where are the most likely sectors, industries, and segments? Pick one. I mean, I force in these classes, like pick one, right? Now let's go figure out for that particular industry, what's going on right now, right? So high level industry research. Who are the local, what are the typical titles in that industry that you want to go to, right? What are the big trends, challenges, pains in that industry? Let's extrapolate from there. Now, who do you know? Let's go pick up the phone and validate this stuff, right? And every one of these accelerators, they make them make 100 calls, right? To potential customers or potential influencers or all of that to validate if that makes sense or not. And that sort of helps them build out that front end. The feedback I've gotten, and it's been really interesting, is it does make you as a startup founder think differently about your business, right?
Oh, yeah.
It really does.
Oh, yeah. When you start talking, when you have to pick up the phone and start calling people, that idea, and I'm not an entrepreneur myself. I work in a business. I haven't built the business. It is admirable. I can't believe that if you're listening to this, you would do something so impressive. But what you think is the solution in your head, and how well you built the product, and that everyone's gonna want it. The challenge is you have to go test it, and the reality is that you may be wrong.
It's humbling.
Yeah,
it's humbling, but it also can give you.
You may be very right though.
Right. I mean, it could be the other way. It could be the other way. About 10 years ago, because I've been in business about 20. This is my 27th year. I can't even believe it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But about 10 years ago, I joined this group. It was a mastermind group, and it was all women entrepreneurs. And I had to present my business for the first time to them. And it was full on, like, non-disclosures, financials, the whole 9 yards, right? And I was pretty nervous about it because there's some pretty successful people in there.
Right. And
something I should have known, but didn't. And I presented it, and one of the people who I really admire a lot said, you could do so many things. I have no idea what your business is. I'm like, what? I have no idea what you do. I have no idea what you stand for. I really don't. And I'm like, oh my God. And in the course of like about 8 years, strip away, strip away, strip away. And then I had a really pivotal conversation with Jill Conrath. I was at an event.
Love Jill.
She's great. And we kind of sat down in a corner and had a cup of coffee. And she said to me, I had the business you have right now. Like I had that before I kind of did my, got into that selling to big businesses, the book,
Right.
and then went from there. But I was the same kind of consultant you are. And she said, there's something that you do that nobody owns.
Mm.
And I said, what is that? She said, it's the value prop stuff, the way you talk about that. Like that's what you should do. So I spent time with this other group, strip away, strip away, strip away. The best part, I have to tell the story. The best part is after that conversation with Jill, 2 weeks later, a box showed up at my house, no return address. She had said to me, you need to be the queen of value props. And I'm like, I was
your confidence is sort of like not there yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just like, the queen of anything. It's like, whatever. And I open up the box, no card, no note. There's a tiara in there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was really cool of her to do. And that's
Jill, if you're listening.
Thank you, Jill.
I mean, thank you, but where's mine?
Yeah. Well, sorry. I'm
not
the only
queen
one.
of anything.
That prompted me to write the book. That prompted me to really narrow in and to get crystal clear about, and I think this is important for every seller. You need to get crystal clear about what value your company's driving, but you also have to get crystal clear on what value you add to that. And I think that's where, if we're scrambling or trying to make stuff up as we're going along, it's because we're unclear about one or the other or both.
Yeah. When you combine those two things.
Right. And so the process that I have, this value proposition platform, is equally usable whether it's a marketing team using it or a salesperson using it. Because even the best value prop that comes out of marketing, I still have to massage it in the field.
Absolutely.
Absolutely have to. And I need to know how to do that. None of us get value prop training. Nobody. I mean, in marketing for years, product manager, when I was a product manager, I never got it. So I kind of took that on thinking, okay, wait a minute. It needs to be a repeatable process that I can use and that I can build up so that I have my kind of bag of messaging and I can easily go back and forth. That's going to make me a more effective seller. That's going to help drive engagement with the people I'm sitting in front of. I'm going to make it about them instead of about me. Isn't that refreshing? I mean, it's kind of differentiating in and of itself.
I agree. And I think that if you're a marketer listening to this, which if you're on the Salesgravy podcast and you're a marketer, God bless you.
Fantastic.
I'm so glad you're here. If you're a marketer, what you should have pulled from that is when you create a value proposition in the marketing department, it's not yet done until it's tested in the field with sales. And I'm thinking I'm building a website right now. And one of my challenges is with copywriting is value proposition for the products and services that we're offering there. And there are some things that I know work because I've had to sell it myself. And there are value propositions that I'm guessing at. And they may sound good. They may be in the right vein of what makes sense. But they're that 2.5D human persona that I'm speaking to, not the full 3D person. I have to have my sellers go test it and send it back to me. Because if it works in the field, it'll work everywhere else. But if it only works on the website for like a click-through rate that's like 6.5%, that's not a sales value prop. That's a nice way to get some click-throughs, and I can make it better. So if you're a marketer, again, thank you so much for being here. Sorry for saying that you don't send good leads. I don't send good leads sometimes. My salespeople yell at me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's. I started in marketing, as a product manager, and I had what I used to term the little product line that could. I didn't have the hot new online cool product. I was selling publications.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So my salespeople were less than enamored with them, even though our top 500 clients have been buying that for years. They were not really interested anymore. And so as a marketer, I kind of panicked. I'm like, uh-oh, not only do I have to market my product line, now I got to sell it too? Are you kidding me? Not a salesperson. And I needed to understand why my sales team wasn't wild about it. And it wasn't just enough to say, well, it should be online. That's not enough, right? I got to figure out why. And we had customers who were buying both the online product and the publication. Okay, that I got to figure out. So as a marketer, your first audience actually is your salespeople. That's the first audience you have to market to. Sorry, it just is.
And they're a tough audience.
And they're tough, which is good, right? And then you have to go to the customer. And for me, that was a really great experience, right? Yeah. I went to 2 or 3 of our salespeople, 2 that I really liked, that I was friends with, and one guy used to give me a really hard time. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what am I missing here? What doesn't make sense to you? And then go to customers and get those same questions answered to find that out. And that basically brought me to the place of saying, I can't create messaging in a vacuum. Doesn't matter which side of the fence I'm on. If I do it in a vacuum, it's a hit or miss.
It's less than a 50-50 shot.
Right.
We like to bend win probability in our favor here at Sales Gravy, and that is not bending win probability. That is chance, and chance doesn't always turn out in your favor. So I love that advice. I want to give you some space here because, again, going back to your background and what you've done, and Jill giving you a tiara, which I'm now just...
It's sitting on my bookcase. Sometimes I wear it around the office.
Jealous. I'm a little angry. It's fine. So you have this amazing background, and I'm so happy to have you here on the Sales Gravy podcast. But where can people read more and learn more how to work with you, how to become better sellers, become better marketers? Where can they go to advance their messaging skills and learn from you?
So valueproposition.com, which is me. And there's resources there, and you can reach me through there. I'm obviously on LinkedIn as well. The book is on Amazon. Value Propositions That Sell. So that's easy to do. Workshops are something I do quite a bit of. So sometimes it's really hard to do this solo. Okay. So whether you're a large organization, I've done it for HP. I've done value prop work in the context of ABM, which I do a ton of work with companies like IBM and Microsoft, mid-market, all the way down to startups. And so you got to think through, if you have a larger group of people who need to know how to do this, then, let's go. HP and I, we brought in all the field marketers, global field marketers, and we did it as a big workshop. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Workshop, teach your own people, bring me in to help you with the messaging directly, or do it yourself. The book is actually a practitioner's guide. So if you go through it, you'll actually have all the steps, which is good.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for being in the Sales Gravy Studios. The reason that you're here, by the way, just to let everyone know before we end the podcast, is that you are a world-renowned expert in ABM, in messaging, and value propositions. We just had the whole conversation about it. But you are also going to be on the Sales Gravy University platform, which we're so excited about.
I'm excited too.
It is the world's most powerful platform for sellers, marketers, and business people to learn about customer-facing challenges, tips and tricks, not tricks, but tips and techniques and strategies, and to learn everything you can about how to become a better business person. You can always check out Sales Gravy University at learn.salesgravy.com and follow your website one more time.
Valueproposition.com.
Valueproposition.com. Go there, follow Lisa on LinkedIn, and we'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy podcast.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to click like and subscribe so you never miss a single video. And if you want more sales training content, go to learn.salesgravy.com.